Hi everybody, my name is Glenn Lucas and welcome to episode 3 of A Woodturner's Life. So over the past couple of days I've been working on producing all of these shavings while making these bowls, and I'm trying to replenish some of the stock after the Christmas sales. I try and do this type of work early in the morning before the sun comes up, and as soon as things get bright I can go out and start working with the chainsaw or milling on the sawmill. A few days ago I checked the progress of the wood drying kiln, so all the boards in that are down now to about 8 or 9% moisture content. So I gave it a chance to cool down, and then this morning I'll be unloading the kiln, bringing the wood into this building and then refilling it. I grew up on a farm just up the road from here, and one of the things I learned early on was to always look after your machines. So before I go outside I'm going to show you how to maintain this banjo, because it's starting to get a little stiff after all the dusty work over the last couple of days. So this is something I would do a few times a year to the lathe, and this is something you'll easily be able to do at home. So let me just take off that banjo and I'll show you how to look after it. The maintenance of the banjo doesn't take very long and it's really very simple. So a few things that you're going to need. First thing is a circlip pliers. And there's two versions of the circlip pliers, so you need to make sure you get the right one. So this is called an external circlip pliers, and in its rest position you can see the way it's closed there, and there's a little spring to open it up. Now this one doesn't work. This is called an internal circlip pliers. So this is used, for example, on a bandsaw when you're trying to take off the circlip to change the bearings, and you need to squeeze the circlip in to remove it. So just get the right one. You're going to need some gloves, prism polish, which is fantastic for any bare metal surfaces such as the lathe bed or the bottom of the banjo. And this is dry PTFE lubricant, so this is going to be for the main shaft in the banjo. It's made by WD-40, but it's not actually WD-40 as we know it. That tends to attract dust, and that's not something you want in there. It has to be a dry lubricant. And then for the pivot points each end, I'm going to use a copper grease. So first things first, just let's take off the circlips, both ends of this. Remove the one from the other end as well. And I'll just lay this one down carefully. The other one just stays in place there, so there's no chance of losing it. I tend to leave the tool rest in place for the moment, because it just stops it from falling over when I turn it upside down. So let me just turn it around so you see what's happening here. So to remove that then, I just need to pull out here and then just bring that sleeve back, and then everything should come easily out. So don't be worried about taking this apart. You really can't go wrong putting it back together. So we'll lay that down there for a second, and I should have started by putting on my gloves, but better late than ever. And I've cut out some wet and dry sandpaper here. This is 800 grit, and this will help me clean the components. You can see the way there's a buildup of dust on the inside there, and it's that buildup causes the stickiness when you're trying to lock it down. So if I'm doing a lot of power sanding, I tend to remove the banjo completely off the lathe, so I'm not exposing it to this dust, but that just gathers up from the turning process. So let's give that a little clean out there for a second. I'll just roll that into a circle and get it inside. But there's actually quite a lot coming out of that, and it doesn't take very much to do it. That's looking good. And then I'll finish with some 4-0 steel wool to clean that off. So I'll spray a little bit of dry lubricant into that. And the dry lubricant prevents dust from sticking in there in future, or minimizes it at least. So what I'm going to do now is just use the same sandpaper in here and just clean out the end of the banjo. Again, there's a lot of dust in here that's starting to just fall free. And again, a little bit of dry lubricant in that area. And we'll just turn that around and go at it from the other side. So this is a smaller hole and it's a little bit harder to get your fingers in there. In the end here, I'm going to just use a little bit of copper grease. So we'll just pop that in there for a second and pop that on the end. So you can get the copper grease in an auto factors. It's very, very easy to get. It's an anti-seize grease, which works very well for this type of work. If you can't find this, I often use, it's called pin and bushing grease, and it's used at the pivot points of excavators. So just a little fingernail of that will work just fine. But the nice thing about this is it's available in small tubes, whereas the other one is available in the big cartridge for a grease gun. So this is going to be a little bit easier. So I'm going to put this out of the way for a second. And now I need to clean both ends of the shaft. You can see the buildup of dust on the shaft that we need to just clean off. And the other end is the same. So again, give that a good clean. It doesn't take a lot to remove this. It just comes away very, very quickly. Same here this end. And a little bit of steel wool. And now we'll just put, again, some copper grease on the end of the shaft there. So a little bit there. Just rub it in. And a little bit here. And that little sleeve just will pivot in that area there. So let me just clean off my hands for a moment. And there's one last thing to do is to clean the shaft here. So again, you can use the 800 grit to get rid of that buildup. A little bit of steel wool. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to just lay that to one side for a moment, and I'm going to finish off by cleaning the base here of the banjo as well. Okay. So now I just have to put it back together, which is quite straightforward. So we'll just slide that in, put on the clamp, and then I just need to pull that ring back a small bit so that it goes into the end there, and then the ring goes back in place. So I'm just going to put the circlips back on now. Do the other end. Just clips into place. Okay. I'm going to finish by polishing up the casting here, and I have a choice of using either prism polish or Davy Shine. So if you're in Europe, Ireland, UK, Europe or whatever, Davy Shine is easy enough to get if you Google it. Prism polish is the one to get if you live in Canada or the USA. So we'll take a little bit of this, and this is absolutely perfect for the bed of the lathe if it gets damp when you're working with wet wood and rust spots appear. This takes it away and there's no abrasive in it. So it just brings it back looking like new, and everything slides very, very easily afterwards. So it only takes the smallest amount. I think I have a little bit too much. I do. And this just brings everything back looking like new. So it just takes a little bit of elbow grease to do a good job. Okay, just put the lid back. And now it's ready to go back on the lathe. Whenever I purchase a new lathe, or indeed if I'm demonstrating on a lathe outside of the workshop, one of the first things I like to check is the locking position of this lever here. So some of the new lathes can have the locking lever clamping up here above 9 o'clock, somewhere around 10 or about 2 o'clock on the other side. And I find that that always gets in the way of the handles of the tools and doesn't always clamp the banjo securely in place. Or indeed on some of the mini lathes, what you can find is that because the bar is smaller in diameter than this one here, with over tightening, that bar can bend. So you'll find that when it's pulled all the way out, the locking lever is clamping somewhere up here. And when it's about midway, it goes all the way down and sometimes crosses over. And in that case, you're going to need either to straighten that bar, which is not easy to do, or buy a new locking lever for it. To get the locking lever exactly in the right position, all I need to do is make an adjustment to the clamp nut underneath. So I just need a wrench for that, and let's take a closer look. The first step here is to just clamp up the banjo, and then just using a wrench of the right size, I'm just going to loosen that off and just back off the lock nut a little bit, and then I loosen the banjo. And if you watch the handle there, when I rotate this anti-clockwise, you can see the handle drop down. So if you find a position that you really like, that's not allowing this to go all the way down to the 6 o'clock position, then at that point you can just lock up that nut. But for me that's a little bit too low, so I'm going to just rotate the clamp clockwise slightly. That's back where I like it. And then I'm just going to tighten up the lock nut. We'll get the wrench on it and just make sure that's good and secure. So I'm happy with that. Now it's time to just head outside. I often get asked where I find the wood and how much do I pay for it. And at this point, I suppose wood finds me. I've been turning since 1990 and I come from a farming background, so a lot of the local farm owners will get in touch as soon as a tree comes down. And also there's a lot of ash trees that are taken down because of ash dieback disease. So I'm trying to bring those home, get them milled up while the wood is still good enough to use. But in order for me to establish a price, I need to know the weight. I think that's the fairest way for me to pay for the wood. And estimating the weight is not that easy, but I have found a really useful website that allows me to do that quite precisely. And the weight is also quite important so that I know how much wood that I can carry on my trailer. So legally, I'm only allowed to pull 3.5 tons behind the pickup truck. The trailer weighs about a ton, so that leaves me with about 2.5 ton payload. So I want to just keep within the legal limits. But this I can access when I'm out and about on the road. And all I need to do is put in the wood species. So let's choose European beech, and the quantity is 1. The length, now here it's just giving me the option of millimeters. I haven't looked any further to see if it allows the imperial measurements, but I normally work in metric anyway, so it's not a problem. So let's go for a length of 2000 millimeters, which is 2 meters, an average diameter of, let's go with 600 millimeters, which is about 2 feet. And then I have to choose the moisture content. So if the tree is freshly sawn, it'll be about 40% moisture content. And quite often the trees that come down in the winter storm, so the moisture is down a little bit in them. So I'm going to go with 35% moisture content. And we'll calculate the weight. So it's coming in at 478 kilograms, so roughly around half a ton. So I can carry several of those logs easily on the trailer. So I do also have an attachment for the forklift that will allow me to weigh them here. So when I get them home, I'm giving exactly the right estimate of weight to the customer that I'm buying the wood off. And after that, you just have to come up with a price that you're happy with and the buyer, or the seller, I suppose, is happy with as well. I have here on the forklift the crane scales and also a logging tongs. So I'm going to be able to just lift this off the ground and see what it weighs and make a comparison with the website to see how accurate it is for future use. So the first thing I've done is actually set this to 0, including the weight of the tongs. So I'm just going to start up the forklift and we'll pick that off the ground. So that's coming in at 694.5 kilograms. So I'm going to just measure the log now. We'll take the length and the diameter and go and see what the computer tells us. So the length of this piece is 3,600 millimeters. So I'm going to measure it around the center point for the diameter, and that's about 550 millimeters. And I reckon the moisture content is about 30% because the tree has been down for quite some time and it was dead before it was actually felled. So let's input that information and see what the website gives us. I need to choose the wood species, so it is European ash and the quantity is 1. The length is 3,600 millimeters. The average diameter is 550 millimeters. And then the moisture content, I think, is about 30%. Let's see, 698 kilograms. and the scales was saying 694 kilograms, so I'm pretty impressed. We've come to the end of this episode, and I hope you picked up some useful tips along the way. And episode 4 will be out in the next couple of weeks. So please like, share and subscribe. And if you want to just click that notification button so you know when the video is released. It also helps if you click the hype button, and you'll see it if you're watching this from your phone or an iPad, and it just helps get the video out a little bit further. If you're interested in some of the products that I use to maintain the lathe, or indeed use on a daily basis here in the workshop, check out the links that I have in the description. So just note that they are paid links, and I may get a tiny percentage of that sale if you purchase from that website. But just know all of that helps me keep producing these videos. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on episode 4.